Right. Good morning, guys. Welcome to Your Next Level Now. Today we have a friend of mine that I've known for many years now. We met through my friend, our mutual friend, Brandy Kamenar. And I got to tell you how Joel and I met. It's been really interesting because when Joel and I met, he was hosting an event at his house that was to launch one of his programs. And I remember Brandy's going, Bob, you need to come to this. You need to meet Joel. I said,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Tell me where. So drove out there, went, and he had a red carpet going in and a backdrop, and uh, and I just remember looking at him, and guys, I looked at him and I said, "This guy's a model. What's going on here?" And she goes, "He's really a good-looking guy." I said, "Yeah, but I mean, what is he doing?" And she goes, because I didn't even ask. When Brandy says, "Bob, you need to come meet him," I'm like,
Sure.
"Yes." I don't need to have all the details, just yes.
Uh,
And so I'm like, okay. And I go, "What's he doing?" So she's telling about performance coaching and executive coaching and just like this really high level stuff. And I'm thinking, wow, I can't wait to get to know this. So we stood out on the red carpet, took a couple of pictures, walked in, and I got to know you a little bit, got to know your family a little bit. And I was like, I am impressed. I mean,
oh, thank you.
guys, you know me. I'm not impressed by what somebody does, but I'm more impressed by somebody is. And the more I've gotten to know Joel, we've had we've had coffee, we've sat down, we've had conversations. I've gotten to, like I said, I've gotten to know his family a little bit. He's the real deal. He's the guy that you can go to, and he's a guy. I tried to describe him to Flo. I'm like, he's a guy's guy, but he's so much more because
I
his
appreciate it.
experience, his vast experience, and just the quality of the human being that he is. So
Yeah.
I've been wanting to get him on here for a while. He moved to Atlanta, so we haven't been able to spend as much time together, but we've had stayed in contact. So I'm just excited for you guys to meet Joel Landi.
Huh. Bob, thank you. That's super, super kind of you. And let me throw some sunshine back. When I met Bob, it was obvious that he and I were going to have a friendship and admire each other's work. And I think shortly after that scenario, that was a party in Hollywood Hills, which I look back now was a bit of a fantasy. It was all cast of characters, music, a chef. It was pretty amazing. But I remember leaving that experience and I thought through, the next couple of days of the people I met. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool because Bob was one of the few men that I would say, kind of lives in my kind of circle of people that, want to create change, people that are really motivated to make the world a better place, people that want to, whether it's personal or professional development, people that really are going to go all in and try to embody the things that they're teaching. And I think we live in an age right now where there's a lot of people out there, there's a lot of voices, and there's a lot of great content. But I think Bob hit it on the head. It's like I want to be around people I can trust and
Mm.
people that the message matches, who they really claim to be. And so, anyway, so Bob, thanks. This is cool. This is a totally random thing. I had no intention. Bob reaches out to me out of the blind, and I'm like, heck yeah, let's jump on a call. If nothing less, I wanted to hear about what you're doing and what's going on in your life. But of course, wherever you want to go, take me. The conversation's yours.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the kind comments. And,
Yeah.
Joel, I just remember that night really going, I really feel a kindred spirit with you. And, and then I remember when we went to Starbucks and we sat down and talked, I felt just, guys, have you ever been around somebody that they make you feel so comfortable
Yeah.
that you're comfortably uncomfortable? Like you go,
Yeah.
okay, I feel comfortable enough to share anything,
Yeah.
and yet uncomfortable enough to know that you're in the presence of somebody who's actually doing big things and
Wow.
not just talking about them. So
Hey,
I remember sitting in Starbucks feeling very comfortable about sharing whatever was going on in my life. And I remember we shared some intimate things about what was going on in our lives. And I remember walking away going, I feel better for
hmm,
having spent that time with Joel. And so I'm just very grateful um,
wow.
and just thankful for you.
Thank
You moved to Atlanta. Let's talk about why you moved to Atlanta because I mean, I'm thinking you're living the dream here in in Southern California, and then
Right.
I'm like, wait, where's he going? Atlanta? Oh my gosh, what happened?
Well,
What was the thing, the precipice that brought you there?
Yeah, well, 2020, the proverbial the curtain came down on the stage with COVID. And it was
Yeah.
really, after 6 or 7 years of my wife saying, "When are we leaving California?" I was having the time of my life. She was thinking there was a lot of other opportunities for us. But before I unpack that, I just want to go back to what you said about me. And again, I want to thank you. This idea of being uncomfortable. And 2023's theme for me was discomfort for the sake of growth. And
Right.
I've built an entire platform. And in fact, I'm launching a coaching program next week, next Monday at 4 o'clock Eastern, called A Call to Rise. And it's all about a man having to reset some of these limitations that time has put on him,
Mm, mm,
and getting comfortable with being pushed again and pushed out and exposed for the sake of growth. And a lot of it is going to revolve around creating discomfort in each other's lives for the sake of growth. And so I just find it crazy that you actually pull out one of the things I thought was going to be one of my major contributions to the talk is that theme. So let me go back and answer your question. So
mm,
2020, right? The best way I can answer that, if you wouldn't mind, is allowing
mm.
me. I'm gonna take you from when I met you at that party in 2013 to 2020 very quickly, just so the listeners can get an understanding
Yeah,
of kind of what got me to that party.
great.
Um, you know, Background and as an exercise physiologist, working in a hospital as a young professional, working with people that just got crushed from heart attack and bypass graft surgery. I saw myself as a person that wanted to help people make a comeback from difficult situations. And of course, that was in a clinical setting. I worked with cardiologists and nurses, and I loved what I did. But it wasn't exciting enough. And so I went into the military. I became an aerospace physiologist, and that I took all the physiology training and I pressed it into this idea that we're going to help aviators avoid catastrophes in the air. We're going to build their tolerance. We're going to help them with their ejection seat systems, night vision goggles, full spectrum water survival training. And we're going to, if they have to, we're going to help them get out of a $43 million jet fighter safely and be able to go back to their family. Fantastic job. In the middle of that job, I have an absolute crisis where I almost lose my wife, who we're going to celebrate 37 years this year. And it pressed me into the most transformative moment of my life. It was actually only over the course of 2 or 3 months. But in that
Mm,
time, I went through almost losing a wife to realizing that I had built an entire identity on this idea that I just had to be successful and make money and provide. And of course, it blew up on me because there was nothing underneath it. And looking behind that, there was nothing that had been formatted or written, coming from a broken home, a handful of male role models, but I tried to figure it out on my own. And so I go through this transformative experience, and on the other side of this, I decide I'm going to stop living for myself, stop being selfish. I'm going to live for other people, and I go into the Christian ministry, and I completely, uh, not abandon. I take everything that I thought I'd learned up to that point in life, and I pressed that into the idea that I'm going to help people. I'm going to get in the trenches of humanity.
mm,
And what I learned about that 17 years as a minister was, people through hardship either get better or they get bitter. And when they get bitter, they start to calcify, they slow down, they get cynical, they stop taking risks. And I also realized in the ministry that we rise and fall on what we believe. And certainly, if you think Christianity, you can relate directly to faith. But as I began to study that topic out, it caused me to launch a company, which is now the Performance Group in 2013, which is what you were at. And the reason why it launched a company on performance coaching was it solidified this idea. It's like the Henry Ford quote: "Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right."
right.
And so one of the things the ministry taught me, believe it or not, was about the power of mindset. It's that it really rises and falls on what we believe and think, and it rises and falls on the stories that we tell us. And I went on to write a book. In fact, I think I talked about, no, the book came a year after you and I met at that particular party in Hollywood Hills. I wrote a book called Rewired. It's available on Amazon. But it's this idea that stories in the subconscious mind, this is all substantiated through science and psychology, stories in the subconscious mind drive behavior, right? So, for instance, we all know people that have phenomenal careers and yet wrecked personal lives. Well, why is that? Because there's a story connected to a personal life. And so that's the kind of approach that I've taken into my performance coaching. We talk a lot about mindset. We talk a lot about reframing and reengineering storylines. But going back to your opening comment, I built a company on this idea that, we rise and fall on what we believe. And we also, for the sake of growth, you've got to be systematically exposed to hard things. And
Hmm.
so that was a great run. And you came to me, you were talking about it was a lot of Hollywood. It was a strange, almost an artificial chapter in my life. Here I am going, I go from the military to the ministry. And now I'm in Hollywood Hills. At that time, I was shooting commercials. I was flying all over the world,
Right.
acting in commercials. Now, spoiler alert, I'm not an actor, yet I'm acting in commercials around the
Right.
world. I started racing motorcycles. So my life just radically changed in a
Hmm.
very short period. But that's really not even an accurate statement. It's like, it's that old adage, how long have you been, waiting to get up to bat and hit that home run? Well, I've been training, for 25 years to hit that ball the right way.
Right.
And so I think the summation of my experiences launched this company. Bob and I were at that party. By the time 2020 came around, my company began to my portion. I share a company with my wife. My wife coaches exclusively with women. I coach mostly with companies and with a small handful of private clients, but I predominantly work in corporate.
And
Um,
guys, make no
yeah.
mistake. His wife is a powerful woman in her
Yeah.
own right.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I want to have her on here as well
You
because
need to.
his wife is incredible and
Yeah.
what a gem of a person. And his
Thank you.
daughters are amazing as well. So,
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, she is. Julie's fantastic, and she's launched her side of the company that in a similar way engineers an approach for people to kind of get in touch with their strengths and beliefs and values and then launch an idea, mostly a business idea around that, and how to monetize that. So we've been going back and forth for years in California. COVID comes, and then I, being a man of faith, I'm watching what's happening to my company, and my company is slowing down and getting small, 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 small.
sure.
Hers is starting to rise, and she's like, I can do mine anywhere like you can. Although at that time, I was almost exclusively face to face in Santa Barbara, working with small businesses and private clients. At that time, I was living in Westlake Village, and I just felt like it was time to go. So it was time to go. And this is the longest response to a very simple question, Bob. Thank you for being patient. Uh,
Great.
as we're in California and California is unraveling and COVID's just in full bloom, about a half year earlier, we visited Nashville and Franklin, Tennessee, and we visited North Atlanta, which is where we moved to, in this little hamlet called Alpharetta. And it was just shocking to see the lifestyle and just the spirit and the vibe and the quality of people. We never pictured really moving into this area ever growing up, and it just seemed like a fantastic fit. We made the decision to move here, and God blessed it, and the business has risen past where it was when I was in Southern California. So it was a great, great choice.
That is awesome. What a great story because sometimes, we get moved to do something that we don't understand all the reasons why, but we
Right.
just and sometimes it works out even better than we thought. So sounds
Yeah.
like that's been a great situation. And I think it's great that Julie could do her business from anywhere. So there was nothing really holding you to one place. I really admire that you guys have set your businesses up that way. Um, yeah, Joel, I just remember thinking this is a guy that I would feel comfortable referring to any other guy
For
or
sure.
gal, but specifically guys for sure, to reach out, sit down, have a conversation with, and know that the conversation is going to be a a quality conversation that's going to be information as well as education, as well
Yeah.
as the ability to translate that into actionable items. I think that's one of the things I've seen about you is that you've not only had these great experiences in the military, great experiences in acting, great experiences motorcycle riding, and all that other stuff, but you've been able to translate that into something that's tangible
Yeah.
for people to go, I could, you mean I could do that?
Right.
And you to be able to say yes and speak into the life. I think one of the greatest things I've seen is your ability to speak into the lives of people with
Hmm.
such confidence that gives them the confidence to move forward. Can
Yeah.
you say where that came from?
Well, I guess the most honest answer I can give you is, first of all, I've been privileged. I was raised in a very affluent area, even though I'm a middle American, I was raised around a tremendous amount of wealth and was just comfortable navigating that area. I think I learned early on that even super wealthy people are just they're just people, and I think I was able to quickly get comfortable with them. Um, I do think through hardship and having to overcome it, it sensitized me to how tough I think life really is. Because there was my parents' divorce, they're losing my mother to cancer. There was Julie and I going through this horrible period in marriage where we were just not on the same page, and so there was a lot of challenge that really sensitized me to that. And then I think one of the things that the ministry can do if you're in the right ministry with under the right conditions is it just really sensitizes you to um, the need to really care for people, and I really learned how to really listen to people and to really care about them. And I think I wouldn't have had that as a component in myself if I didn't go through that extraordinary uh, hardship. I think in hardship you're pressed down into the dirt, and if you're fortunate, when you get back up, you have a message, you have a purpose, you feel like you've been transformed. And I want to talk about that hopefully by the end of this, because I've got a learning model that I'm now in the middle of that really resonates with people that I want to share with your audience. But I think Bob, that's the best question is best answer to that question is I think hardship and being in the ministry just really sensitized me to a lot of brokenness in the world and our need to play a role in comforting and strengthening and galvanizing a better version of other people that we have a role to play.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the benefit of that understanding is that when we're going through the hard times, we see something on the other side of it.
Yeah.
I think without that, people go, I'm hitting a hard time and don't know what to do with it, and they walk out without making the investment that they can expect an ROI. They're walking into it as an expense.
Yep.
Um, so I love the fact that you're categorizing it so in such a way so that somebody can actually use it as an investment.
Love it.
Um, you know, um, you mentioned difficulty in relationships, right? Can you kind of go through that? Because I know a lot of people right now that they're having relationship issues with either with their kids or their parents or their spouses.
Yeah.
And how do you get through something like that? I'm divorced, so I know how to not do it.
Right.
But how do you get through something like that? And what was going on at that time with you guys?
Yeah. So 1993, San Clemente, California. I'm a naval lieutenant at El Toro, which is in Irvine, California.
Mm.
45 minutes is a long drive to go to work, but I was driving 45 minutes in one day, in the morning, working sometimes a 10-hour day, and then, coming home, working very full hours. I think it to say it began to unravel then is probably not a completely accurate thing. I think going into a relationship, this is my experience, and I'm actually watching my 27-year-old daughter who's engaged to a 28-year-old her husband, future husband. I'm so proud of them because they're actually going through this form of like almost premarital counseling to figure out like what do we believe and value and what kind of statements are we going to use and how do we define things like love and loyalty, things that I never even dreamed of doing. I just jumped into marriage because I thought Julie was cute and I thought, okay, this, my heart's being pulled in this direction. And there's probably not a lot of thought at age 23 going on beyond the surface, really. I mean, and if there was, I was not willing to go there and not smart enough to articulate it. So by the time this, we both woke up and realized, we are not happy with each other. And it got to the point where we're like, we don't want to be married any longer. We just don't. And we were living secretive lives. We were very deceitful with each other. And it was, we really, really damaged something that had value, but we really never built it the right way. We had to, and I'll tell you how we did it, but let me tell you I'll tell you first what we did, and then I'll tell you how we did it, right? What we had to do with our broken relationship was much like when you buy a decent house on a gorgeous property and you tear the house down by the foundation and then you rebuild it. That's what we had to do to have something that we felt like we can trust and build on. And what I mean by that is when you go into a marriage with this understanding, like, win at all cost and, let's go to the top of the mountain, it's ridiculous. It's inflated, ego driven. And for me, it was just covering up a lot of hurt places that I didn't really have, the character or the understanding to sit still, to get comfortable in my own skin, to know what I believed and valued, and then to really care for another human being. Because at that time, it was just more about sex and money. And, it was throwing things at your partner that you thought they needed, but not
Mm.
really the human connection that can only come through, the depth of your own heart and your own love.
Yeah.
What changed for me, Bob, was when my marriage was in an absolute crisis and at the end, is I had to take responsibility completely for both sides. And this is a very difficult thing, but it worked,
Mm.
right? Because in a marriage, two people do bad things. And most people would be like, I'm not taking responsibility for what the other person did.
Right.
I don't even know if I can. I mean, the reality is most people are more, inflicted with the idea that the reason why I did what I did was because you did what you did. But
Right.
for the first time, I took this 100% responsibility position. And once I did that, I started to take a deeper inventory about like my origin story and like how was my father parented and how did I receive care and what messages did I get about what it meant to even care about another human being. Like I had to do a lot of deep diving on what about all those ideas. And I
Mm.
think when we're
Mm.
hurt, the first thing that we just lash out is the thing that we get hit with, which is sometimes a symptom of a much deeper issue. And so that was for me, the brakes came on and the car came to a grinding halt. And I go, okay, I'm responsible for this. I'm in a marriage that's failing. Someone else has failed. If I'm a leader, well, then let's just say that in this context, I'm leading another person in love. Well, I failed and my leadership failed, right? That was the starting point for me to try to figure out as best as I could, because otherwise I'm going to play the blame game. And as soon as you play the blame game, you can't, there's no room for change because you're essentially saying the reason why something failed was because of you. And then you've given up all your control and all your ability to change yourself because you're saying, well, then you've got to be the person that's got to change this.
Mm.
So
Mm.
the idea
Mm.
of 100% responsibility was for me the turning point that allowed me to kind of get to a next step. And
Mhm.
then, I think as I looked at myself and I realized either I had to learn what humility was, and I had to really see how my shortcomings and my blind spots really prevented this marriage from being what it should have been.
Mm.
Uh, and as that happened, it began to change me, and I began to be less accusatory and bitter and nasty and more looking at myself going, okay, this is the outcropping of a blind spot. This is the outcropping of not developing a part of you. This is what happens when these things are in place or not in place. And then I think what made the marriage actually survive was the idea of true forgiveness. Not, let's just move on, let's bury the hatchet. It was true forgiveness. It was having to reach deep down. And of course, I learned that in more of a Christian theological context, which teaches you really what forgiveness is. And it's a much deeper dive than, hey, I forgive you. It's a lot of work, but it's worth the journey, because we could have easily unplugged and left. At that time, we had no kids. And it's not like we had this huge pile of cash that we were sharing. We're just starting out in life. And it was actually a lot easier. It almost made more sense from a worldly perspective to go our
Oh,
separate ways.
wow. So, what was it that made you make the both of you make the commitment to make that work?
For me, I felt so my parents got divorced when I was 13. And you talk about your life getting turned upside down. And when events like that happen at a young age, I mean, different people handle it different ways. I didn't get counseling. I went what I call underground. I just,
Mhm.
no one knew what was going on with Joel, and
Right.
I presented a facade of trying to cope with my life. Um, on the other side of my parents' divorce, I think I felt a lot of shame, and I think my identity then became a bit of Joel from a broken place.
Mm.
And I worked through that at age 30, but I think when my marriage started to unravel, my first thought was I just don't want to fail again. Like I want to move away from that brokenness. And could it be different for me? Because looking back in my rearview mirror, that was my history was kind of following me forward, right?
Right. Right.
So I felt a sense of I've got to get this right. I can't fail. And I know that's really not a heroic love story reason. I just felt like I didn't want to fail. I'd love to say it's because I had this burning love for my wife and I would walk over broken glass and into a burning building, but I felt like I can't fail. I don't want to. It was just too much of a burden to bear that expense again. And so that was what I think put me into that position. Now, I will say, of course, I did re-fall in love with my wife, and I call it the days of Camelot. Like after we actually went through this process, which takes a lot of courage. When you sit down across from somebody and you got to go, okay, you've known me for 12 years. I'm opening the kimono up. Here's the stuff that you don't know about me, what I think, what I've done, and then be comfortable with that. And I thought if we can survive that, we can survive anything, and we have. But we chose that route. We chose to just go that route, and it was a new beginning. And as I said earlier, we rebuilt that house on some really different material.
See, I think it would be easier if you had this mad magnet love for one another to
Correct.
do it versus to go, we don't feel that for each other right now,
Correct.
but we're willing to do the work anyways to gain that back at some point,
Correct.
knowing that at some point it may or may not come back exactly the way you envision it, but you're willing to do it. I mean, I think that takes way more courage.
No.
And Man, thank you for sharing that. That's
Yeah.
huge. I think that's huge.
Yeah. Well, I want to hold out hope, because there may be a few people listening to this.
Yeah.
And I think, with the exception of our kids getting hurt and, being in a bad place, I think when we suffer from being in a primary relationship, that's really painful.
Mm.
It's debilitating, and I think, I mean, it's bad if your health is not well and you're in a bad career, but man, if you're in a relationship and you're really suffering, that's like somebody sitting on your chest. It's hard. So I hope that my story, it can provide some hope. There is hope, and I've used all those experiences and tools, and I've brought them forward
Yeah.
into my coaching practice. And I brought them forward into a coaching model and a mindset that I teach that now has allowed me when people ask me, so how did this all come together? It's this conversation. I was like, well, it was really born through hardship is
Yeah.
really what it came through. And it came through the understanding and the experience that, wow, people can get through really, really painful stuff. Like if Julie and I can come back from what we came back from, then I hold hope out for a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. And I can see how so many people would benefit from that. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
You've been through the military, you've done executive coaching, you've done, all kinds of stuff. What do you see as the common thread um, that leads people down the wrong path in any their career, their relationship, their health, their finances? What do you think are the common threads?
Well, I think the first thing that comes up for me is fear, and then which is closely connected to a lack of courage. And I think courage is my most important value. I don't consider myself an overly courageous person. I mean, every time I get off the racetrack on a motorcycle, I literally feel like I've cheated death. I don't feel like a conquering
I've
hero.
seen some of those pictures. You are cheating death.
Yeah, so there are things that I've done, that I feel like I've got to go so far beyond my own comfort zone just to actually execute on. But I think so. Going back to the question, I think people, yeah, I think they go down the wrong road. I think it's fear. I think another huge thing is, I said it earlier, it's they just don't believe that there's more for them. And it's sad because we rise and fall on our level of belief. And however you want to define the belief, let's just say we define belief in a strict definition outside of Christianity as the idea that you believe that there's a certain element of truth. And if you apply certain things, it's going to turn out in a certain predictable way because there's a belief in that, right?
Mm. Hmm.
And so I think that what I've noticed about people, and I've worked with a span of really interesting people, um, fighter pilots, orthopedic surgery, like the whole gamut of people, Navy SEALs. It's amazing that you can be super smart and yet not have some real basic fundamental pieces in place that allow you to live a much more rewarding life, right? You can be like super successful and make a ton of money and be very unhappy and have really even have a low resilience to challenges, even though you're super smart in an area. So I think so. It's fear. I think it's fear. I think it's a lack of belief that really punishes people. And then, Stephen Pressfield wrote an incredible book called The War of Art, and he talked about resistance. And it's just this idea that in human nature, we resist things. And there's a lot of different reasons why we resist things, but resistance is just, it's a topic in and of itself. So I think fear, I think the unwilling or incapacity to really believe, like that's one of the first places I work with. Like if I hired you or you hired me, Bob, and we were coaching, and that would be like the first place you and I would camp out is Bob, you're going to have to convince me. Like, okay, whatever your goal is, you're going to have to convince me you really believe this. And we're not moving forward until you really convince me. And I would put you to the test, almost like you'd have to defend your belief system in front of me
Hmm.
to believe that,
Hmm.
okay, he really does believe this. Because I don't believe in that adage, fake it till you make it. You can't fake faith. It's
Right.
not, you're not capable of faking it. You have to either believe that something's possible and then build on what you have. And maybe your belief level's a 3. Well, don't pretend your belief level's an 8. You don't
Right.
do that to yourself. It's going to blow up on you. Stay at the 3 and go to 4. And then next month, try to get it to 4.5 or 5. And then you're going to have a great life. So I think those 3 things play a huge role in people not changing.
I think that's huge.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to get people to be honest. And I
Yeah.
love the term that you used, that you're going to camp out there until they
Yeah.
do. I love that in the term of coaching. So thank you for doing that.
And if
One
I
of
can
my
add,
coaching
add one
clients.
more thing, if I can add
Okay.
one more thing, Bob, just to be in the moment too,
Yeah.
is the fear thing is, pain, right? So nobody likes pain. So last Monday, I have to confess this in front of your audience, being an aging, maybe idiot is a strong accusation to call myself, but I'm in the gym and I'm working on this leg press thing. And I'm not even going to tell you what I had on it because it was at my age, I don't need to do this. I'm challenging myself. Of course, I'm in the middle of something that's really heavy and I hear something rip and it's not my pants that's
Oh,
ripping. And so
really?
I'm in the ER and several days later in an MRI, I tore one of the muscles, my leg muscles off of the bone that it inserts to because I just had put I was way out of my muscles were strong enough, my soft tissues were not strong enough to do this. So pain, right? I told Julie this the other day. I said, I know why people are addicted. People are addicted because no one wants to be in pain. Pain is
Mm,
an awful thing, man.
it really is.
Emotional
Yeah.
pain. Emotional pain is just
So,
overwhelming, right? It's overwhelming.
yeah.
Physical pain. My heart was soft. Not that I'm not advocating people numb out with drugs, but I go, this is why so many people are addicted, man, because pain is real and it's hard to overcome. So going back to your question, this is another reason why I think people stop growing, and it's because it's too painful. Because they've done it before and it didn't work out. They did it before, it blew up on them,
Mm,
and that's part of I think being a great coach is getting people to that point where they got to put their toes on the end of the diving board again, or at the edge of the pool, or on the cliff. And they've got to get there. You can't push them, but you've got to walk them up there. You got to start talking to them about what they see and what they're going to experience when they eventually fall forward. What is this going to be like again? You got to get them there. That's part of what we do. So that's something I just want to throw out there.
yeah, no, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I think a couple of things come to mind when you're talking about some of the people you're dealing with. I mean, you're talking with some of the elite people that have huge egos, physicians, fighter pilots. I mean, you're talking
Yeah.
about some of the creme de la creme. How do you get through that ego for them, and how do you help them get through their own ego and their own BS so that they can move forward?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, I think we have got to reflect something that they see as attractive. And I think what I've tried to do with people that have huge egos is try to be very humble around them without lowering my conviction for things and showing them about what I'm serious about, But I think I've tried to model something that's attractive. On a complete side note, I don't know if this connects that well into this, but this is a top of mind thing is I remember when I was first exposed to people on the other side of my near divorce that had healthy marriages and really healthy family lives. I remember just almost marveling, like looking at them like, wow, this is something that is almost so foreign to me. Like on the other side, like I came from a military background, a lot of bravado, a lot of ego. I didn't have a lot of commentary on marriage, but most naval officers didn't really talk about their wives that much. It was all about the mission, right? And being excellent in a mission. I think as I got on the other side of the this crisis and I began to rebuild, I think watching a strong man talk about his wife with deep affection, it moved me. And I thought that's what I want to be. I want to be just like that because I like those two dimensions in a man together. A man
Mm.
should be very strong, but he's got to be very gentle and have the capacity to love. And so I think go back to now, re-ask me that question because now I know I said this might not even connect to what you're sharing.
No, it does, because how do you get through
Oh,
someone's ego
yeah,
when you're trying to help them, or help them learn to
right.
get through their own ego, which can stand in their way from getting the
Yeah.
help they need?
Yeah. And I think that the short answer is modeling, I think, humility. Um, and I think, it is the idea that virtue is a reward in and of itself, right? So if somebody is loving, they're going to be rewarded because they're doing an act of love, right? And so I think but it is hard. It's hard for people to drop the egos. What I've learned is with humility too. One of the things I do in coaching, and one of the first exercises I do in coaching is called the timeline exercise. So Bob's my new client. Bob, in 2 weeks we're going to get together. I want you to make a list of all your highest highs and all your lowest lows in life. Go back as far as you can in bullet format. And I want to talk about the people and the ideas and the events that have shaped you as a leader right now. And then we're going to look at how are those ideas behind you? Do they drive good performance? How do they affect decision making? But there's another reason why I do this exercise, because, and I tell them, I said, you go as deep as you want, Bob, but I'm going to share my life and I'm going to tell you like who I am and where I've been at. And what I've noticed is when I go into that place and I really bare myself to another person, it's not uncommon for people to say, and in your line of work, you probably hear this a lot too, which is, I've never told anybody this.
Mhm.
And I have got to hold back the laughter when people say that because I'm so used to hearing it. But
Right.
I think this is why. It's why because they feel me coming so willingly toward them and going, here's the stuff that really wounded me, but I'm here to tell you I'm on the other side of it. And so I've got good news for you if you have a similar struggle. People find comfort in that, and they find comfort in the fact when someone has been in that situation, hurt, and they've made a comeback. There's this instant bond that people can go, okay, I can trust this person.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the things that I found is that, and I saw this with you when we sat in Starbucks. I saw that the ability to share your vulnerability gives them permission
Yeah.
to share theirs. And I think everyone's looking for permission to
Yep.
be real, to be raw, to be relevant,
Yep.
looking for permission, but the world doesn't give them permission very often. So when they find somebody like yourself that gives them that permission by saying, here's my wounds, they go, holy cow, you mean I can do that?
Right.
So thank you for
Right.
being that man.
Hmm.
Thank you for
Appreciate
being that man, one in my life. Because I remember feeling that way that day that we had that one-on-one conversation.
it. Yeah.
And I've seen that over and over again. So thank you for
Thank
being
you.
that man.
Thank you.
Yeah. You know, I want to be able to open it up for some Q&A, but I want to ask, can you tell us to speak into the lives of people that are sitting there saying, okay, I know I'm doing well. I mean, there's a lot of people that are doing well that,
Right.
have cranked it up, they've ratcheted the, and yet they're sitting there going, I know I can do better. I just know I can do better. How do you take somebody who says, I'm doing well, but I want to do better? What's the first thing? Do you go through that timeline process, or what is it that you do first?
Let me answer that question with an idea, and then I'll directly answer it. If I don't, just ask me again, and I'll promise I'll ask it. I'll answer it
Fair
directly.
enough.
But I think this does satisfy the question, right? Um, Joseph Campbell,
Mm,
Hero's Journey,
yeah.
right? This is a template that I use in my coaching practice, and this is going to answer the question, right? All of us are called to something, and multiple times over life. Mark Twain said, 20 years from now, it will be the things that we did not do rather than the things that we did that we will regret, right?
Yeah.
Um, Regret is a cancer. There's nothing more horrible than meeting with somebody and them talking about regret.
Mm,
It's just punishing, right? So we're all called to something. And as we tell our stories, hopefully the storyline is, yeah, I never pictured being in the military. I got this opportunity. I went. I remember the day I soloed this airplane. I remember the day the military gave me this $1.5 million airplane and said, Joel, it's yours for a day. Go do whatever you want with it. And I thought, wow, man, like I never thought I would stand in that place. But it was a journey. And I said yes, right? In the hero's journey, people are called to things. Even like the most successful person that's watching this right now is either going to be called or has been called. And if you bear with me in the progression of this, you'll see the wisdom in it, right? Is that we are called. A lot of times people reject the call because of preservation, comfort, whatever. Especially, I mean, sometimes affluence is a curse
mm,
because people coast when they're affluent, right? But then people want to rise to some kind of a calling, right? And so once they do that, they then go through a series of tests and trials. They meet allies, they have enemies, they've got critics. But at some point, they are going to have to face something in that calling about themselves, right? Like in my crisis in 1994, I had to admit the fact that I did not build a marriage that could survive.
mm,
It was built on a lot of false hope. It was built on a feigning, deceitful ego. It was not built on faith, hope, and love. It wasn't built on character or courage, none of those things. And it broke, right?
mm,
So going back to this question is, I think people, especially if you're listening and you have been successful, the hero's journey to follow the whole template is the person faces himself or herself and they're victorious. And when they're victorious, they come back to something or someone and they have a story, but they also have a desire to give back.
mm.
And I think that's one of the things that I don't think I've ever met anybody that is in a really good place financially that's saying, I don't want to give back. I just want to basically do my own thing. I mean, that to me is a broken soul because the template is a universal theme that says if you and I, Bob, if we were unfortunate enough to be really hammered in life and then fortunate enough to be able to rise above it, no one would need to tell us to do what we're doing right now. Like no one's telling you to do a podcast,
Right.
doing it
Right.
because inside of you there are things that are going to be passed on to other people that one day they're going to pick the phone up and go, Bob, I can't thank you enough, man. That one call, let me tell
Mm,
you what I did with that one call. I made 3 calls, and the third call, it changed the way I live, right?
mm,
So that's the hero's journey. And so I think the appeal is you're going to get called again, and will you answer the call? And
mm.
are you going to get faked out to believe that there's nothing else to confront inside of you? I mean, are you a fully actualized? Now, if you are, then go write a book and teach us. If you believe that you've looked at every facet, you've overcome every part of you, and there's nothing else to conquer in you, well, then you need to be an authority and you need to be teaching people what it's like to be that person because you're a rare bird, man.
Yeah,
But
I'm into that one.
for the rest of
Mm,
us, though, the rest of us, we have an opportunity to get called to do something and then to give back. And I think that's what this call is. And that's what, as I was mentioning earlier, this coaching group or a call to rise is
Yeah.
about. It's about people that are going, okay, there's something else here in front of me. I might not even be clear, or I am clear. I've just said no to it, but
Mm,
I've got to confront it, and then I've got to get in play, and I've got to let this thing take me where it's supposed to take me.
yeah. Wow. And when does that program start?
It starts Monday, a week from today at 4 o'clock Eastern. It's called A Call to Rise. I can send you a link, and if
Yeah,
any of
please
your
do so
folks are
we
interested,
can include that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And if anybody's listening to this and you just even want to just talk to me for 15 or 20 minutes about that, that's fine. I'm not expecting, yeah, whatever that people would like to do. But going back to the template, I think that, Bob, for me, the thing I love about this conversation and about this what I call really a learning model and a growth
Yeah.
model is that it's for all cultures and all ages over all time.
Mm.
This is not like, well, this is Tony's learning model. This is, whoever's. This is not a person's. This is something that's so ubiquitous over time. In fact, I'll just say this, and I'll throw it back to you that
Love
if
that.
you look at all of the most successful blockbuster films made of all time, it has these exact dimensions in that exact order because it connects with everybody. It
Yeah.
connects with everybody, and that's why it's so popular. So
That is so good.
yeah,
I'm so excited for you to do that. I just know that you're going to help so many people. So thank you
thank you.
for being willing to do that. I
Appreciate it.
love the idea of the calling and I remember the Bible verse that says God's callings are irrevocable.
Yeah,
You can run from them, but they don't shy away from you running. They'll just follow you. And they're
yeah,
there.
yeah. I believe
Yeah,
that.
man. So let me open this up. I want to introduce you to Jim Miller. He's a member of the program, and Jim is a leadership guy and just a super quality human being
Great.
that has dealt with some similar issues that we've all dealt with, and he's very approachable, very coachable, and I think one of the best things I love about Jim is he's very relatable.
That's great.
So Jim, meet my friend Joel.
Thank you, Bob. That you're always so kind. Joel, it's a pleasure to meet you and hear your story. And I relate to what you're saying so much. I've considered myself a corporate chameleon for years,
Yeah.
and I became that person that was just there, but really didn't. I had an impact, but it wasn't me. And so I've been through a lot of changes. I love that you're doing a new program called Arise. It sounds like a wonderful thing, and I want
Thank,
to learn more about it.
thank
So
you. I'm honored.
yeah,
Thank you, Jim. Where
thank you.
give me a little bit of background about you. So, grow up East Coast, West Coast, Central states. Give me a little
Born
back.
in New Jersey
Wow,
and grew up, moved to California when I was 5, so grew up in California.
awesome.
Uh, yeah, good family. Went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, married, a couple of kids, have a granddaughter now. Was divorced after 32 years, and that was tough. That was a
Yep,
tough thing.
yep,
Took me a while to regroup, and now uh, Bob is helping me to kind of reformulate everything that's going on. So yeah, there's a lot of exciting things. It's very fun, exciting, but just taking baby steps, like you suggest.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I'm originally from New York. My older daughter did her first semester at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo.
Okay.
He was like, Dad, I want to go to the SEC. So she bailed out and graduated from Ole Miss, which is two different parts of the world and
Wow.
on many levels. But anyway, but no, you're in good hands, Jim. You're in good hands with Bob. And
Absolutely.
as I mentioned earlier, it's never too late. One of the things I put in this call to rise things, one of the catches on the PDF was, it's never too late for a man to get it right and to do great things. And I really believe that to be true. I do think it does come with sometimes just really evaluating some of the foundational beliefs and how you
Hmm.
execute on a foundational belief, you
Yeah.
know. And that's what I had to do. I was grateful, like in the middle of that crisis with Julie, and I didn't even think the marriage was going to make it. And it was a plan of God. Bob talked about an irrevocable plan. I mean, it shouldn't have made it, you know. But it's a powerful thing when people are willing to really reevaluate, you know, the foundations of what they think and believe, and then to rebuild on those. I think that's just exciting stuff. And I will just say this one other thing, Jim, is, you know, I'm going to turn 60, and let's see, Saturday. I'm looking at the calendar. I'm looking
Oh,
at the
wow.
calendar
Big
right now.
day.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Um, I think one of the most important thing, one of the most important things we can do with our time right now is really train our minds. And so I think mindset, mental health and mindset training and work, very specific work, I think is where we can be of biggest service and provide the most value and care and really make the most impact, you know. And I've seen it even, you know, as I've gotten older, man, when you get soft in that area, life gets soft. And when you stay strong in that area, life stays vibrant, you know. And so for me, that's one of the mantras of, you know, in coaching is having a real disciplined, whether you want to call it a mental fitness program or resilient, whatever words are attached to
Hmm.
it, getting up in the morning and spending that first 30 to 45 minutes and going, okay, these are the things that I'm going to place, I'm going to ruminate over, I'm going to say out loud, I'm going to stand up on one foot, I'm going to juggle whatever, you know, I'm going to do whatever it takes to believe these things and bring them into my day, because I think these are the things that are going to help me be my best and make the best choices with my time. And so, anyway, pleasure meeting you. Thank you for sharing those things, and wish you all the best.
Excellent. Yes. Thank you for your insight and
Yeah.
your experience, your ability to articulate. Um, yeah, it's great. Thank you. It's a
Okay.
pleasure to
Thank you,
meet you.
Jim. Thank you, Jim.
You guys will stay connected. We'll put you both in the group and make sure that you guys stay connected because
Cool.
I know that Joel can bring immense value to anyone, any man that I know, any woman that I know, any
Thank you.
child I know. I would trust Joel to do right by him and help them a lot. So
Appreciate that.
yeah,
It's awesome.
thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
So Flo, I know you like to make comments and questions, so go ahead and bring yourself on.
Thanks, Bob. I do have a question for Joel. Enjoyed immensely your story and your vulnerability.
Thank you.
Um, I found it interesting because I too went through a divorce after 25 years. I wrote down, who'd you have to become to take that 100% full responsibility?
Man,
A great question.
you know, you say that and I'm sitting down, like it sits me down in my chair. Like I feel that question, right? That's not just an intellectual thing. That's like a shake question, you know. Um, I'm going to say that I had to become who I was supposed to be.
Mm,
I was not who I was. I think I was holding back. And I think that's the unfortunate penalty of not having the right people at the right time in your life.
Yeah.
I think you don't develop at the rate that that you should develop at. And so I think I had to become who I really was. And I think because I think in my core, I really do. I'm capable of love and I'm capable of being responsible, but I wasn't at that time in my life. It was literally the opposite. I was self-centered. I was shallow. I was brash. There was not a lot of attractive things. I mean, maybe my physical appearance, but other than that, there was not a lot of things that were attractive in me, you know. And so, and it makes me emotional because I think that's what I want to do for others. You know, is I think that
mm,
we all have to play some form of a role at some specific time in other people's lives. And I think, you know, life, there's a reason why we're supposed to be in communities. I mean, I used to say families, and then I go, no, it's a community. It's not just a family. It's a large, we should be in a large group, you know, and we should be cared for and influenced by multiple people. And we all know this as adults. You know, one of the worst things we can do is isolate.
Nicely. Yeah.
That's one of the worst things that we can do, and especially when we're hurt, is isolate. And that's all I did, Flo, when I was going through this thing, is I just isolated, and then of course it got worse. So anyway, thank you for asking that question. Of course, it got me really emotional. That was a deep question. Um,
Service, do I remember El Toro back in the day?
you remember Al Toro?
uh
Yeah, it closed up in I think 1999. It finally closed its doors. I was there from 92 to 95. Good run. Very transformative event. My life changed at that base indirectly, and at that time, I should say, not at the base, but at that time.
Hmm.
Yeah. Thank you for your
Thank you.
service. Great.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. That kind of leveled me a little bit there. Boy, I bet you she keeps you on your toes, Bob.
She does. She does. Smacks me around, keeps me on my toes. She's a good woman. She's a very
Yeah, I
good
can
woman.
see that. I can see that. Well, you're a good man.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I
Yep.
appreciate you. I'm very grateful for to Brandy. I'm going to reach out to her today and tell her
Yeah.
I'm just really thankful for that night that she introduced us, and I'm
Yep.
grateful for the impact that you've had on my life. And even though we haven't been in the same room a lot, just witnessing you, watching you from afar, our conversations, I've always just walked away feeling um, empowered, feeling better. And
Yeah.
so I'm going to reach out to Brandy and tell her that we had a great conversation today. Joel, what's the best way for people to stay connected with you? How do you like them to reach out? Do you like them an email, phone? What do you like?
Well, I know a lot of us are on probably LinkedIn. So, I mean, LinkedIn is an easy place to connect.
Okay.
Um, my email is joel at theperformancegroup.us,
Okay.
not .com.
Right,
A
right.
lot of people say I just reached out to you. You're never available. I said, well, you had the wrong address. But yeah, I think between LinkedIn and I think between email, and then I would love to, if any of your viewers want to jump on a phone call. I mean, I do have a scheduling apparatus that I can get people on my calendar for calls, and that's probably the easiest way to do it. But it would just start with an email, and then I have someone that helps me coordinate that part of my life. But yeah, I would love to. I mean, if you reach out to me on LinkedIn, you're probably going to get me directly in the next 12 hours. If you reach out to me in email, you'll get me in 24 hours. But yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to be a part
Yeah,
of that, Bob. And again, thank you for this. This has been really special.
absolutely. Guys, here's an opportunity. Don't miss it. Here's an opportunity to sit down, have a conversation with somebody that knows 100% about what he's talking about because he lives it. And I've seen him live it. There are very few people that I can say with certainty that he lives what he's teaching on a regular basis and a consistent basis. And so, take the opportunity. And if you're watching this live or recorded, make a comment, go back, make the connection, and you'll be glad. You'll be really glad that you did. And you know what? Let me just say this: it's not just going to be that you're glad, um, but that your family will be glad, that your children, your wife, your spouse, your husband will be glad that you did. And as you've heard me say many times, that anytime that you and I operate from less than our absolute best, the world is operating from a deficit. So I don't want to operate from a deficit. So guys, do whatever you can to be surrounded by people like Joel, where they can actually speak life into you and help you become the next best version of yourself. So thank you, Joel. I appreciate you. I love you. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. And I look forward to having Julie on. So definitely want to do that.
Great. Bob, thank you. I love you too as a brother. This was man, this was such a joy. It completely exceeded my expectations. I love how you do this. I'm actually going to imitate part of what you do here because I think it's super smart. But the conversation is powerful. It really moves me. And yeah, I'd love to play a small role if I could in making the world a better place. So, and I know you're doing that. Keep up the great work. And you may be getting an invitation from me soon to do something in a parallel world. So we'll see.
Love to. Anything I could do, I would love to. Thank you,
Thanks.
brother. I appreciate you.
You too.
All right, guys, get out there, make it a great week, and enjoy your next level.
Thank you.
Joel, we will, let me stop the broadcast. See, it's still broadcast. Hmm. It's still broadcasting.
Still
So
recording.
yeah, we're recording. I'm okay with recording. It's just the starting to broadcast. It's supposed to stop. It's not doing that. That's okay. We'll just
I can't get it off either.
you can't get it off either. Oh, isn't that interesting?
Well, you actually hit the recording, so